just finish off then with U.S. foreign policy?
We're okay with the time frame.
Yes, good. Let's just do it, Mark. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. I'll do the abbreviated version, perhaps in the interest of time. One thing that I found was that back in 1987, Donald Trump, a younger Donald Trump, spent the better part of $1 million on a full-page ad in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Boston Globe. And we get a little bit of a taste of the earlier Donald Trump's foreign policy because a president elected for the second time, not consecutively, controversial, interesting things going on. Some of them look good, some of them very questionable. So let's look a little bit more at his past views, right? So if we move on, I distilled what's in the ad and put it on here, and the main parts are in red. And he asks, why are these nations, he's referring mainly to Saudi Arabia and Japan, why are these nations not paying the United States for the human lives and billions of dollars we are losing to protect their interests? Remember, this is 1987. Saudi Arabia, whose very existence is in the hands of the U.S., Trump wrote, refused to allow us to use their minesweepers. The world is laughing at America's politicians as we protect ships we don't own, carrying oil we don't need, destined for allies who won't help. Over the years, the Japanese, unimpeded by the huge costs of defending themselves, as long as the U.S. does it for free, have built a strong and vibrant economy. Let's move on. And I'll hit a little bit more of just the highlights. Basically, he's saying make Japan, Saudi Arabia, and others pay for the protection we extend as allies. And he wants to help U.S. farmers, he says back then, sick people, homeless, and so on. Tax these wealthy nations, not America, end our huge deficits, not a bad thing. Reduce our taxes, who wouldn't want that? And let America's economy grow unencumbered by the cost of defending those who can easily afford to pay us for the defense of their freedom. Now, a lot of that sounds good to most people, but what he's basically saying is, okay, if he wants to enact the Monroe Doctrine again and focus mostly on the Western Hemisphere, as the think tanks are saying, and he doesn't want as much meddling and foreign entanglements, you're not really getting rid of foreign entanglements if you're asking to get paid to protect these nations. So he's not saying Japan should pay for its own defense, Saudi Arabia should pay for its own defense and carry that out themselves. Even back then, he was saying, as long as we get paid, we can continue to be entangled with these countries and defend them. So it's simply a transactional thing. Pay us some money and we'll defend you. Again, George Washington would have said these countries should defend their own and pay for it themselves. So it's not exactly the founder's view there. It's a different species of foreign policy. People can make of it what they will. And the think tanks, this is from Foreign Affairs, of course, the august journal of the Council on Foreign Relations, the price of Trump's power politics. They're saying that if Trump retreats to the Western Hemisphere under a Monroe Doctrine-ish kind of thing, that China and Russia will become more emboldened. And of course, that could include China making stronger moves toward Taiwan, perhaps. That's kind of my addition to what they had to say there. And then you'll notice the finality of what the think tanks are saying here. And in this quote, Ivo Dalder is president of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and James Lindsay is a CFR fellow. They wrote an article together very recently in Foreign Affairs, 30 January. They're saying literally under Trump, Pax Americana is gone. You'll notice the finality. Born with a Japanese attack on the Pearl Harbor in 41, the U.S.-led international rules-based order, they're saying, has literally died with the second inauguration of Donald Trump. And the post-global order, the post-war global order, is not just obsolete. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. The post-war global order is not just obsolete. Secretary of State Rubio declared in his Senate confirmation hearing, it is now a weapon being used against us. So the think tanks don't think too well of Trump. They see a lot of disruption to their agenda. And this last item just mentions Rubio's first trip as Secretary of State officially was to the Panama Canal. And sure enough, they're wheeling and dealing there. And he's basically saying that the cooperation with China by the Panamanian officials and the Panama Canal management if they don't change that relationship with China, China reportedly controlling both of the main ports, then the U.S. will throw its weight around a little bit more and basically call the Panama Canal Treaty null and void, and the U.S. would move in to control the ports and probably the overall canal that it did build. So they are following through on the Panama Canal. I don't think they'll use military force. They're trying to use as much diplomatic leverage as they can. And I think that's sufficient for now, Mike, on how the think tank world sees Trump. Again, not too favorably. They're trying to sort it out. But Trump turns out to be an enigma in many ways. But his foreign policy makes some sense, but there's still a lot to sort out. And the think tanks are kind of in a tailspin right now, seeing their global world order under siege as they see it.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you for that. We'll have to leave further conversation on that till extra, but I'll just make the point, of course, that Panama has said that they are withdrawing from the Belt and Road, so that's making some moves towards appeasement of Trump's position on this. But we'll talk about more about that in extra in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much to Patrick and Mark for joining us today, and everybody that's been watching. Thanks for all the support, and stick with us if you're a UK column member for extra. Otherwise, have a great weekend, and we'll see you at 1 p.m. on Monday as usual. See you then. Bye-bye.